Hi everyone, this is Sarah Caroleo. I'm here today to talk about my family tree and to look more at my ancestry and cultural heritage. So both of my parents have done quite a bit of research in the last 2 years on their lineage. I know a lot, especially through my dad's line, so I'll try to keep it brief for my older generations over here and just share more themes to explain more how my direct relatives have impacted me. So, as you can see here, that's me, Sarah. My maiden name was Dothager, which is German. So, through my dad's line here, that is German heritage. And the farthest back that we know is actually the sixth generation for me. This man, Ernst Dothager, the R wasn't added until the next generation. But he immigrated from Germany because he was a farmer and was looking for more farming opportunities. So he moved to Missouri because I believe there was good farmland there. And he married this woman, Caroline, pretty much right before the Civil War started. But then once the Civil War began, Ernst joined the Union Cavalry and went and fought with them. So when he returned from the Civil War, Missouri was a split state, and from what my parents say, it sounds like there were some tensions even among his own family. So he moved this family and his children to this tiny town called Pittsburgh, Illinois, which is in central Illinois, maybe a little south of central Illinois, but it's mostly just a tiny farm community. So Ernst farmed once he was in Pittsburgh. He passed that heritage on to his son Frederick. And honestly, through this whole side of the family, like you can see going down this way too, everyone was from Pittsburgh because that's where they all lived. It was a small farming community. Our understanding is there was very little focus on education just because people were working. But we did have a few preachers in the family, but mostly farming. So my grandpa's mom, Elsie, she came from a family, her last name was Dunn, which is also German, but we don't know as much about that heritage, like how they arrived to the United States. But we do know that Elsie was the first person in my grandpa's family to graduate from high school. And she worked as a cook at a hospital in a town called Greenville, Illinois, which you will hear often in my family history. It's going to come up again. So that's kind of my grandpa's side. My grandma Dothager, she came from a family called Rose, and Rose was Irish. They also were in Illinois, but just in general, her family I view more as industrial. Like this is a farming family. This is more industrial because Richard Rose was a chemical company worker in Illinois. His son James was a flour mill worker. Again, very little schooling here, just more manual labor. James ended up moving his family to St. Louis for the flour mill work, and that is actually where my grandma Dothager was raised, was in St. Louis. So through my grandma's line, we know that there's a McGuire as well, which is also Irish, but we really don't know too much about this part of the family tree. So that's my dad's side of the family. It's mostly just European descent, German and Irish. My mom's ancestors, honestly, looking at this side, my mom's maiden name was Nolan, which we know is Irish, but we really don't know much about this part of the family, just because my mom's father, Jerry, left my grandma when my mom was 2 years old. So he had 2 children with my grandma, but then left. And he had a lot of issues, so we just don't know very much about him. We do know there's very little education on this side of the family, quite a bit of poverty from my understanding. But he was from this town, Greenville, Illinois, which is the same Greenville that this great-grandma worked at a hospital. So already starting to see some interesting connections there. We know that his dad was a farmer and he was like a truck driver. So again, pretty more like manual type of jobs or blue collar jobs, if you will. My grandma, her maiden name was also Rose, which is interesting because look at this. Not the same Rose, luckily. But we know that this Rose was Irish, and my grandma's family came from Oklahoma. So what's interesting about my grandma is that John Rose, this man here, he was Irish, but he married Jenny, who was a Cherokee Native American woman from Oklahoma. So their son Claude technically was mixed race with like Irish and Cherokee, but then her mother Stella came from two Cherokee parents. So unfortunately, we don't know a lot about the Cherokee heritage on this side of the family just because there's very little documentation. But yeah, I think that could be something that influences my family. My grandma was the youngest of 7 kids, and I believe her mother died when she was pretty young. So unfortunately, she doesn't know a ton about her family. They're just starting to learn a little bit more about it. So that's the later generations. Like I said, mostly European, and then some Irish, some Cherokee over here. Looking more at my direct ancestors, let's go back to my grandparents over here. My dad's parents, my grandpa and grandma both finished high school. My grandma did some coursework at Greenville College, which is the same Greenville, again, that you see here. And when she was going to college, she met my grandpa. So he was from this small town of Pittsburgh, but when they got married, they moved to Alton, Illinois, which was more industrial. And he worked as a telephone lineman for Illinois Bell for his whole working life. And she was a secretary, again, for her whole working life. So they're also, just pretty standard jobs. My dad was actually the first person in his family to go to college, and he went on to get his MD from Vanderbilt University. Since there wasn't a ton of money on this side of the family, my dad went through ROTC to pay for med school. So he actually served as an army doctor for 10 years, and he's been serving as a pulmonologist and sleep medicine doctor for almost 30 years now. When he was done paying back the army and traveling around, he settled in Belleville, Illinois, which is about an hour from Alton and an hour from Greenville, where my mom's family is. When he met my mom, she was going to school at Greenville College. She actually, because they had to move for his ROTC thing, she did not get to finish college, but she was a stay-at-home mother of 4. I am the third of 4. And yeah, I was raised in Belleville because that's where they've been pretty much this whole time. So kind of upon reflection, I think for me, some big takeaways of my family tree would be there's quite a bit of European descent. There's some Cherokee descent. But I also feel like some values have really pervaded my family. My family is largely Christian, which I think stems from these preachers all the way back here. It's been passed on. And it's also a family that's really committed to a hard work ethic, I think stemming from some of these more blue-collar jobs, but also just really valuing education. I think because my dad saw how much education changed his life, and because my mom regretted not getting her degree, they've both really encouraged me and my siblings to pursue as high of education opportunities as we can. So I'm interested to learn more about how the cultures have impacted my development, and I look forward to learning more about you all as well. Thank you.